Iceland has been on my bucket list of places to go for a long time. So, second week in July, my wife, my son, and I got on a plane, headed to Iceland to have a 5-day adventure. We planned to drive around the country in some long trips. So, we rented a car. It was a really good car, a Peugeot of some kind. And we rented an apartment near the center of downtown Reykjavik to use as our home base. Since our flight got in at 7 o'clock in the morning, we decided to make the most of that first morning since we couldn't check into our apartment until around 3 o'clock. So we decided to go to the Blue Lagoon, which is kind of a resort, natural hot springs. It's located just a little ways away from the airport at Keflavik, and it's really located in a lava field, and it is the site of some thermal hot springs, and it was built right into the lava field, as you can see walking along here. And my understanding is that it is pretty much all natural. This is what the water looks like. This is a pool that you don't go in, but a pool there nonetheless. As you can imagine it being a resort where lots of people are in their swimsuits and lounging around in a hot springs, that they're kind of careful of people's privacy, which is why this footage is so bad. This is the only shot I took of where we actually were, but we spent several hours in the hot springs. It's really huge, and there are parts of it that are much hotter than others. It was a little awkward sometimes, but it was also really relaxing and kind of a great, beautiful way to start our trip. The water itself and the area is really strange. After the Blue Lagoon, we went to the Viking Museum, which was located fairly nearby, where they have a replica Viking ship. We tried on some Viking helmets. That's me. This is my son. They had a lot of information about Vikings, particularly about Vikings visiting North America. And you could actually even go on the replica ship, which was really cool. It was really a nice little museum. The weather when we got to Iceland was terrible. It was incredible. It was cold and windy, as you can see here. This is just outside the Viking Museum, and their wind gusts probably up around 50 or 60. We headed into Reykjavik itself, checked into our apartment, walked up Rainbow Road. This is the touristy kind of center of Reykjavik. Iceland is very LGBTQ friendly. We went to dinner at this restaurant, got some fish and chips because we weren't feeling all that adventuresome, and then kind of decided that was probably enough for the day. Went back to our apartment and slept and got rested for the next day. Day 2 was supposed to be our whale watching day, but as you can see from the weather here, it was really bad, so we decided to use this day to go on the tour of the Golden Circle. That's basically a circular route through kind of the interior of part of Iceland that's near Reykjavik, which has kind of 4 or 5 really big touristy sites that are all kind of natural wonders. You can see that we had some driving to do. The first place was Thringvellir National Park, and we concentrated on this area where the tectonic plates from North America and Europe actually meet, right here where we're walking. You're actually walking along the crack between those tectonic plates. It's a really kind of beautiful place, even in the rain and the mist like we had here. It's really kind of an amazing place to be. With all these really old, or I guess not all that old, rocks thrown up on the side from the friction between those continental plates. You can see how windy it was from the tree on the right here. This is also the location of the oldest parliament in Europe. Icelanders have been meeting here from the mid-10th century, I believe, and the acts that created the Iceland government today were signed there sometime in the more recent past. There's also this really beautiful waterfall, which feeds into one of the biggest lakes in Iceland. From there, we got back in the car, did some more driving, and this time we're headed to Gullfoss, which is just a huge waterfall. I'd seen pictures of it, in my research for our trip. I'd seen pictures, but nothing really prepared me for the scale and kind of just how out in the middle of nothing it actually is. So just incredible sights and sounds here. One of the things that amused me most about Iceland is how limited the barriers are between you and the things that you're seeing, which can be quite dangerous. If you look out there on that point where you see those little people, there's only really just like a knee-high kind of rope strung around there telling you where you can and can't go. Occasionally do see people step outside that rope. I'm not nearly that brave because, last thing I want to do is die on vacation. But just a huge amount of water, a huge amount of noise, beautiful, green. And because it had been really rainy and a lot of runoff, the water was probably a little more brown than it might be other times. But just a really beautiful and kind of amazing, awe-inspiring place. This is my favorite shot where you can see down that valley to up at the top. So it was about lunchtime, so we went to a little kind of restaurant, gas station, gift shop all in one and ate some lunch. Terry had a ham sandwich, Ben had a hamburger, and I had lamb stew. It's all really good. One thing I would say about going to Iceland is don't be afraid of eating food at what we in the United States would call a gas station. I'm not saying it's the best food in the world, but it's really good. Our next drive was to the Great Geyser, which is exactly what you'd think it was. The weather improved for brief periods of time on our drive, and one of the things I liked best about our trip was the drive itself, just driving across the country. That is the Great Geyser, which is, essentially a natural hole full of boiling water. This is a small geyser. There are all kinds of thermal hot springs and water because of all the volcanic activity on Iceland. This is the Great Geyser again, which is, like I said, it's just kind of a big hole in the mud and rock of kind of semi-boiling water, I guess. It's really hot. You see how many people were there. I'll talk about that here again in just a minute. But it's about to erupt. If you watch the water closely, you can see it coming. It was a lot cooler than I thought it would be when it went off. There are large crowds, even with the weather. It's summer in Iceland, and Iceland's become a big tourist place. And there were large crowds at most places, not at the Carrot Crater where we're heading. One of the ways that we tried to take advantage or tried to avoid that was by getting up early and going to places and being there before most of the people got here. It didn't work out as well for us on Golden Circle Day because we had to go see if our whale watching ship was going to go or not, but it does pay off for us in the next days. This is an old volcanic crater that erupted, collapsed on itself, sealed itself, filled with water. It's kind of cool to look at. We did not go down. You can go down and walk around it, but we didn't do that because rental home, didn't want to get too muddy. And then we got in the car and drove back to Reykjavik. Got home in time to eat dinner. This place was called Reykjavik Street Food, and you can see the menu there. They have about 9 items. I had traditional fish soup. Terry had lobster soup or lobster bisque. Benjamin had the same thing as I did. So day 3 was all about exploring the south coast of Iceland. This was our first really big driving day, so you're going to see a lot of footage where we just shot out the window. The landscape changes dramatically from the area close to Reykjavik as you get out to kind of where the cliffs and the waterfalls and the black sand beaches are. But we got a really early start. It's summertime in Iceland, so the sun never really goes down. The first place we went was a kind of national park area called Dyrhólaey, which is named after that hole in the cliffside that's created by the sea that you saw in some of the earlier shots. Our primary mission here was to see puffins. My wife Terry really wanted to see Arctic puffins, and Iceland has the largest population of Arctic puffins. We climbed up that cliff you saw just a minute ago to this vantage point where you can see the black sand beaches. In the distance there is the most popular black sand beach. This is a formation called the Little Elephant because it supposedly looks like an elephant in the water drinking. I can kind of see it if I try. This is Dyrhólaey itself. we are up again on a cliff we had to climb. I think there's a picture of the path we had to take, which was really steep, but not a very long hike. This was just really beautiful, and I kind of like the fact that it was misty and rainy when we were there. Yeah, there's the path we had to hike up to the cliff where we could see that vantage point on Deer Hilly. And this is the black sand beach on the opposite side. This is not where people go. Again, this is looking back towards the touristy area there. And we did not go to that beach. We did go to Black Sand Beach, not this one down below either. There will be a lot of footage of puffins later in a section I have about animals, but I wanted to just kind of concentrate on the natural beauty of Deer Hilly, which you can see again in the distance there. And from there, we're going to drive to the town of Vik, which is located really just a few miles from Deer Hilly, but you have to drive kind of around a 25 minute loop. And our goal was to go to Vik, get something to eat, and also to go to what is referred to oftentimes the hidden black sand beach. This one we decided to go to because it's far less touristy. There are a lot fewer people, and by this time of the morning there were a lot of tourists. When we first got to Deer Hilly, there was almost no one there. By the time we left, it was packed. And so this beach is really just on the other side of this cliff you see sticking out from the Diamond Beach, which is the one that most people go to. And you can see here that there are very few people on this beach. And it's just as beautiful, and the sea is just as amazing to look at, and you can still see those basalt columns in the distance. There is a cave kind of area you can walk to and explore. They don't have the strangely octagonal shaped basalt columns like they do on the other beach. And to me, that was the only really big difference. There are also a lot of bird life here, and there were puffins here as well. So this is looking down the beach towards where Vik is itself, but just a beautiful place. We ate lunch again at a restaurant which was located in kind of a visitor center. I think Ben had some kind of chicken sandwich. Terry had a grilled cheese ham sandwich. And then we got in the car and drove again, and we really started to catch a break with the weather. Got increasingly nicer, and our next stops along the way were waterfalls. One of the most amazing things about Iceland is that there are these beautiful, incredible waterfalls that are just on private property, and you can't go see them. This is not one of those. This is one that is open to tourists and has a lot of amenities for tourists. It's called Skogafoss, and it is a huge, beautiful waterfall, and it's usually busier than this, I understand. But you can see all the people close to the water. You can also climb up to the top. We made a strategic decision as a family not to kind of climb up the top of any of the waterfalls you see, because it would increase the amount of time we spent and therefore kind of cut down on the places we saw. It's an economic decision. We saw less of some of the places we saw, but we saw more places. That's kind of how it worked out. If you stay to the end, by the way, my wife has a brilliant picture of this waterfall with no people in it. I'm not exactly sure how she did it, but this is the biggest waterfall we saw on this day. And when I took this footage, I got incredibly wet. I was pretty soaked. And then more driving. Again, the landscape of Iceland is just beautiful, and the drive itself was one of the best things. And if I had the capability, I would have just videoed all of the drives. This waterfall is Snaefelsness, I believe that's how you say it. Not as big as Skogafoss, but you can get closer to it. And it has, on the same place where you go for this one, there are other waterfalls as well. You'll see one of those in a minute. We did stand out there and take our picture. We see that lady, but none of those pictures came out very well. We looked really tiny, so I didn't include any of them in this video. But you can see the scale. You see the people moving. I'm pretty close to where the water is hitting the caldera, and you can walk behind there. Again, we didn't because you get soaking wet. We didn't all want to be well. This is a waterfall I can't pronounce, but it comes down through this really narrow kind of canyon, and water kind of sprays out in a weird way in different places. But it's really beautiful, as you can see from this picture that my wife took. And then more driving to get back to Reykjavik. One of the great things about visiting this summer is almost unlimited daylight. One of the bad things about that is if you are a sensitive sleeper, it can make it hard to sleep. But just a truly beautiful, wonderful, fun drive. I think for an American, the distances are not nearly as daunting as they seem to maybe Europeans. That night, we decided to order in a pizza. My wife and I went and had a drink in a bar while we were waiting for our pizzas to be ready. And then we took the pizzas home to the apartment and we ate and got ready for the next day. One of the things I was most nervous about on our trip was this whale watching venture because I get very seasick, but we got a great day to do it with sun and relatively calm seas. I took my Dramamine, and even when it was really wavy, everything was fine, and it helped that we were constantly kind of scanning the horizon and looking for whales. You can see how beautiful it is as we leave the bay where Reykjavik is located. You can see a great distance, which was really good for whale watching. The sun kind of came and went a little bit, but just a really beautiful day. We set up on the top deck to look for whales, and we enjoyed the kind of cruise. Again, you can see how calm the water is. Out to where the whales actually are. I thought they were actually in the harbor. They're not. So these first pictures are pictures that the photographer on the boat took, and I want you to kind of compare these to the pictures my wife took, which will be the second set of whale pictures. But we got lucky. We saw humpback whales. We saw some dolphins. These are pictures from the front of the boat. We were kind of on the side of the boat, as you can see here, but we got a great view of the whales and saw most of them, which was a far more affecting experience than I thought it was. This is my wife's picture of a dolphin from a distance, and these are her whale pictures, which I think are great, considering that she didn't have the advantage of being at the front of the boat. And then we made the cruise back into Reykjavik. This is actually us leaving again, but I didn't have a good video of us going back in. It was a really great experience. One of the best things about our trip was that our apartment was only 2 blocks from kind of this middle of Reykjavik, this Rainbow Road area, which meant we could access it for meals, for shopping, for sightseeing, whenever we wanted to. Reykjavik is not a very big city, and you can walk around large parts of it. The afternoon we went whale watching. This is what the weather was like, and there were people out everywhere, and I just thought the city was beautiful. And I know that downtown area where we were is touristy and expensive, and all those kind of things are set up for tourists like us, and I don't care. I am a tourist, and I didn't have any qualms about being in a touristy area. There were bars, there were restaurants, there were places to shop, there were stray cats. There was ice cream, which was excellent. We had ice cream. I also had one of the hot dogs, or famous Icelandic hot dogs, the most famous hot dog stand. We walked by this church. This church dominates the skyline there. I can't pronounce it, so I'm not going to try to say the name. And then we ate dinner at this bar and grill where we all had pasta. Ben and Terry had seafood pasta. I had carbonara. Just really a great day. When that was over, we went out to a little peninsula in kind of suburban Reykjavik just to spend more of the glorious afternoon, which you can see how brilliant and sunny it was here. My wife took some great photos of the lighthouse there and the sun and fjord and all the things, and really just a glorious, wonderful, good weather day. And we're going to go back to our apartment after this and get ready for the longest day of driving. This is day 5, our longest driving day, and we are exploring the Snaefelsness Peninsula, which is 2 peninsulas north of Reykjavik. To get there, I have to go through that really long tunnel, and again, driving was just a pleasure because of beautiful scenes. The first site we arrived at was Gerdeberg Cliffs, which are these basalt cliffs with the kind of the cool geometric shapes. It's down a really rough road, and there was absolutely nobody there when we got there. It's not a place where you're going to spend a whole lot of time, but it was really beautiful and kind of impressive. Again, on this day, we decided to try to go to as many places as we could, instead of spending a lot of time at any one place. Again, that's just the decision we made. As being tourists with a limited amount of time. Back in the car, more beautiful drives. As a matter of fact, I think I repeat this shot. One thing about the driving video you'll see is I got it all scrambled up, and so it's not necessarily us between places. We found this really cool waterfall, Grundarfoss, which you really couldn't walk down to, but which is breathtakingly beautiful. And we took some pictures there and, took a break from being in the car. Back in the car, and here's that footage again, my repeat footage. Oh well, it's beautiful to look at. On our way to our next big site, which is one of the more famous sites, I think, on the Snaefelsness Peninsula. We're on the north side of the peninsula right now. And we are at the first of many waterfalls you'll see in this video. This is Snaefelsness, which there's about a mile hike from the parking lot to the waterfall, even though you can see it from the parking lot. And it is a beautiful waterfall. Not as big as Skogafoss, which we saw on the South Coast day, but really beautiful. You can also see that there are people up at the top. Again, we decided not to hike up there because it would add, a good 30-45 minutes to our round trip. And I kind of like the waterfalls from this position as well. Plus, we had a lot of walking ahead today. Back in the car, beautiful mountain scenes, valleys, geography, lakes, oceans, just a great driving day. Again, one of the things I liked best was driving, which is easy in Iceland, by the way. And then we came to the most famous site, probably Reykjavik, which I think was made famous in the movie or the miniseries Game of Thrones. It's used as the backdrop for something. I've never seen it. It is a striking kind of mountain, kind of set off right on the coast. And really easily to photograph right there at Reykjavik, or the waterfalls of Reykjavik, which are not particularly high where you can get to them, but they are beautiful. Again, just I can't even describe how wonderful all the nature was. Here's some beautiful shots my wife took of the waterfall and the mountain together in the same shot. And this is actually, if you look way up there in the kind of the middle right, that is actually the waterfall coming down from the mountains, which I believe feeds into what we saw as Reykjavik. Back in the car, this is one of the most beautiful shots I think we got from the road, so it's going to be a little bit longer. Out there in the straight ahead is the Atlantic Ocean. There are really cool little villages along the way. They don't have a whole lot of amenities, but just enough, where you can take care of what you have to take care of and buy things and fill up on gas as long as you're careful and don't get down below, about a quarter of a tank. I don't think gas is a problem with driving. These are the Longranger Cliffs. This is in a national park right on the tip of the Snaefelsness Peninsula. And these basalt columns are the really famous part of it. I was surprised to see a sailboat off the coast there, but it made for a really beautiful video. Again, these are those basalt columns, and you can approach them from either side. We did both. This is the second side, and this is the more dramatic side where you can see the cliffs. Here's my wife, who has a fear of heights, actually standing out really close to the end. And then you look closely, you can see me up that little trail. And then this is a video of the columns themselves. Which I'll say again, the Icelandic government basically trusts you not to be stupid when going to these places. There are warning signs that stay on the path, but not a lot else. This is the ocean visible from kind of a high point. The roads are narrow, but they're well paved and maintained. They're easy to follow, and you get to drive on the right. Another thing that makes driving in Iceland easier than driving in Scotland. We decided to head for lunch to this little village called Helnar. I had heard that there was a little cafe there which had a great view of the ocean, and this is it. That little building there is where we ate. There are only 4 tables inside. There are a lot of tables outside, and fortunately we had good weather. This is the view from our table. This is bread that I was served with the fish soup I had. My wife had a quiche, a vegetable quiche, and a salad. My son had smoked salmon on bread, and just a really good lunch and a beautiful place to sit and eat. From Helnar, we got back in the car. I think this is the tallest mountain on the peninsula, and we headed over to this kind of iconic photograph place, which is the Buddha, which just means black church. And it is beautiful, and it's set in this kind of desolate kind of looking place with the mountains in the background, and it is a place where you go and you immediately want to take video footage and pictures, as we did. If you look carefully in the Buddha picture, you saw this waterfall in the background. This is our next one, is Bjarnarfoss, which is a really narrow but very high waterfall, which I believe you can actually hike up to the top of. Again, we didn't do that. There is a bridge at kind of a higher point, much higher point than we are here, and that's how far we went. Again, this is the video for people who like waterfalls, and I just thought they're amazing. I think the geography of Iceland is beautiful, and we had just incredible days to go to these places and to see all these sights. We're going to the Ytri Tunga Seal Beach, and the attraction here are seals, and if you look carefully you can see them in these pictures. Again, there's a whole section of this video which is just about animals of Iceland, where you can see my wife's excellent pictures of the seals. If you look to the left, you can see a seal actually moving. This is footage I took on my phone, and it was a really great place. My son really enjoyed seeing the seals here. In our experience, seeing all the animals was one of the highlights of the trip. And now we're on the road back to Reykjavik, where we're going to, once again find a place to eat and spend the rest of our evening. One of the great things about our trip, with all the wildlife and kind of domesticated animals we got to see on our trip, the first ones on my list here are the seals. We just saw it at Ytri Tunga Beach. My wife got some excellent photos of the seals lounging around on the rocks, apparently after a hard day out hunting and swimming in the ocean. She's just a really good amateur photographer and got some really great shots of these animals. There are actually two types of seals. One is a harbor seal, and now I can't remember what the other one is called, but I can't tell them apart. There are a lot of sheep in Iceland, and they apparently in the summer the farmers just let them out and they roam all over the place. So you'll find them along the sides of, quiet kind of country roads and incredibly busy highways like this one, and they're just hanging out. And so you have to be aware the sheep are there, and check your speed accordingly. These are two sheep we saw on the road coming away from those cliffs at the beginning, which we got really good shots of there. And this is a sheep that was just on the side of the highway. Everybody had to slow down for him. I was surprised to see Arctic foxes. We actually saw two. This is the one that we saw for the longest, and it was right there at the Longranger cliffs. When we went to the second location there, and my wife was able to I was able to get some good footage of him running away. Arctic foxes are of course white in the wintertime because it blends in or camouflages in the snow. In the summer, in the warmer months, they turn this really ugly brown and black color, and that helps camouflage them. in the dirt in other areas. I was really surprised to see them. These are my wife's photos up close, and we saw one more which crossed the road right in front of our car, right there. My wife was kind of obsessed with two animals while we were in there, Icelandic horses and puffins. Icelandic horses are different than other horses. As a matter of fact, the Icelanders are so proud of them that they don't allow the Icelandic horses to leave. They are smaller than other horses, so we didn't go horseback riding because my son and I are too big, too heavy to ride them. But they are beautiful horses with really interesting hair, and we stopped to take pictures of them often. And the place where we are now, we actually got to pet them. We didn't have anything to feed them. They were very friendly. We came right up to the fence, and we got to get really close to them and take these pictures. And this little piece of video of this fella. But the big animal we wanted to see were puffins. I think I mentioned this, that Iceland has the world's largest population of Arctic puffins. They're only there in the summertime. The rest of the time they're out at sea. This is the footage we shot and pictures we shot of them at Dyrhólaey, which I told you I'd be showing later. There were a lot of puffins there. And for a while we thought this would be as close as you can get. The Icelandic government is very careful about protecting its wildlife, and they keep you away from the areas where the nesting is supposed to take place. So you can't get really close to them in lots of places. Puffins are monogamous. They mate for life. They go out to sea and then they return back, and they, meet up with the same mates and have more puffins. These are my wife's incredible pictures of puffins she was able to get on our camera. This is some footage I got of one puffin by himself, which is really close to the trail where you're allowed to watch. I hope he wasn't missing his mate. And these are two puffins, and you get to see them both fly away, and notice how hard they have to flap their wings and how high up we are. You can kind of tell that as they go away. So another incredible trip. I'll close with just some more pictures that my wife took of all the days that we were there, and I want to thank her again for helping to plan an incredible trip and making it take place. She's the travel agent in our family and the photographer, and this was just a phenomenal trip. Hope you enjoyed watching.